Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from today. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to our webinar on disability sport. If you would like live captioning for the webinar, please click on the live transcript button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. My name is Amanda Wilkinson. I'm the Chief Exec of Motivation. For those of you new to Motivation, Motivation is an international charity and social enterprise that works to help unlock some of the barriers that stop disabled people from being fully independent and included in their communities. To do that, we design and provide wheelchairs and training programs for disabled people, their families and professionals. Our work focuses on low and middle income countries, but our sports wheelchairs are shipped all over the world. Not only is sport and play essential to our health and well-being, access to sport and play is a human right, recognised in the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. By promoting tolerance and respect, empowering underrepresented groups and contributing to health, education and inclusion, sport is also an important enabler of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We at Motivation see how important sport is to inclusion in our programmes. So Motivation has developed low-cost, entry-level sports products which allow people to try new activities, sometimes for the very first time. We also use sport in our programmes to support inclusion and tackle stigma head-on. Our All Stars project in Uganda is supporting disabled people, children to come to and stay in school by including them in mainstream sport and play. This summer, we are incredibly proud to see our multi-sport wheelchair take centre stage, made over as it was as a one-winged airplane at the opening ceremony of the Paralympics in Tokyo. We were glued to our screens watching the Paralympics, inspired and moved by the performances, and delighted to see greater global representation from more countries than ever before. But how inclusive is the Paralympics? We know that access to the right products, services, or training is often really limited, even in the global north. And in less wealthy countries where disabled people may not even have adequate access everyday healthcare and rehabilitation, disabled people face even more significant barriers to accessing sport. So while the inequalities of opportunity persist between participating countries, can the Paralympics ever be inclusive? And what more can be done to address who isn't on the podium? That's the subject of our discussion today, and I'm delighted to have TV reporter and broadcaster Jarrett in the driving seat to steer and guide our panel discussion with a panel of brilliant representatives from the sporting world. But before I hand over to Jordan, I just wanted to deal with some logistics for our event today. Jordan is about to introduce the panel and will kickstart the discussion. Thanks to all those who already submitted questions on registration, and some of these will be put to the panel after the main discussion. But we'd also welcome your questions during the discussion too. So if you have any questions, we'd be pleased if you could write them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screens, and we'll take as many of these as we can after the main panel discussion. We are recording the webinar today so we can reach an even wider audience after the event, but any Q&As captured or submitted will be saved as part of the recording. But that's enough from me, on to the discussion. Jordan Jarrett needs no introduction, but I'm going to attempt one anyway. Jordan joins us just weeks after commentating as part of the award-winning Paralympics coverage for UK's Channel 4. But he's not only a commentator. He played wheelchair basketball for 15 years, captaining the GB junior side in European Championships and World Championships and playing professionally in the Italian League. He's also an editor, a presenter on TalkSport Radio, ambassador for the charity WizKids, and creator of the It's All Blackademic YouTube show around issues affecting the Black community. So an impressive resume. So obvious why we're so delighted to have him host this discussion. George, I'm going to hand over to you now to introduce our brilliant panel, but maybe you could tell us a bit about your journey in disability sport and why you feel this is an important discussion to have right now.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Wow, no pressure there. Thank you for that introduction. I'm very, very glad to be here and hosting this event here today. As Amanda mentioned, the issue on the subject of disability in sport is very passionate to me. I did play wheelchair basketball for up to 20 years, home and abroad, and for Great Britain. But I've always had a passion for sport in general. Sport has become my work, and I'm a very lucky person to have sports as part of my work now. So I'm very blessed in that sense. Been a broadcaster and a journalist for 20 years, over 20 years now. But on the subject of disability in sport, which is, as I mentioned, very personal to me, and the subject of whether disability sport is inclusive and accessible to all or just a privileged few to enjoy, I think it's a very important one. And having traveled the world and played the sport basketball at all levels, I've seen that natural talent isn't exclusive to a particular race, culture, or country. So if talent isn't exclusive to any of one of those categories, then why do some nations like UK, the USA, Japan, China, France, Australia, as an example, do really well about the Paralympics and other nations do less well? Why can't, for example, Pakistan win gold in bocce? Why can't Liberia win gold in wheelchair fencing? Why can't Peru win gold in parasailing? Now, you can't tell me it's because people from Peru don't like water or boats. Of course not. So there are obviously other reasons to why some nations are not able to have the same opportunities to excel at the high level of sport. Every country has money, so I don't buy the argument that some nations don't have money. It's all for me about being intentional. It's all about your vision as a country and how you prioritize spending as your nation and where you put that money and whether your country deems funding disability sport enough as a priority. And that's just talking about at the elite end. Let's not forget that not everybody wants to be a Paralympian, right? Some people just want to play sport because they love sport. Not everybody wants to be a gold medalist. So what about the people that actually want to just play sport because they really, really love sport? I'm thinking about the person from Pakistan, Peru, or Liberia who just wants to play wheelchair basketball. Where's their access to a court and to a ball to have the chance to every week just bounce a ball? That's quite a lot of where my focus is. And a lot of the focus I hear around the issue of sport and disability sport is always at the elite end. It's always looking at how many medals can we win. And people don't look at the other element of grassroots sports and disability sports. So, for example, the more people in your country are taking part in sports, that's good for not only their mental but physical health, but also you can reduce the weight, for example, of the national healthcare issue. So if there's more people active and taking part in sports, you're going to have a healthier nation, as well as people enjoying what they want to do more so. So those are my kind of initial thoughts on disability sport and why I believe some nations do better than others. It's about prioritization and also intention of how seriously your country takes disability sport. I'm going to get some panelists on right now to talk a lot more sense than me and really give their insights and experiences into what they think the issue around disability sport and inclusivity and where in their region it's happening, where it's improving, and maybe where it's not improving. So I'm going to start with Craig Cuscarden, who's based in the UK but working globally. He's the CEO of the Cerebral Palsy International Sports and Recreation Association and has been since 2019, also working alongside people with disability and creating opportunities for sport and recreation. CIPRA's vision is a world where people who have cerebral palsy or related neurological condition have the opportunity to participate in the sport and recreational activity of their choice. I'm also joined by Memory Kalari, who's based in Namibia, is development and inclusion specialist at the Namibia National Paralympic Committee, and has also been the assistant to the chef de mission for the previous 3 Paralympic Games, and is also a board member of Sport on the Move Foundation, supporting athletes to compete at the highest international levels and to plan for life after sport. My third guest is Suleiman Colley, who's based in Gambia, and we can talk afterwards. I'm going to Gambia next month for a holiday. And it's the president of Gambia National Paralympic Committee and formerly physically Disabled Sports Association for 20 years. It's to support access to sport and elite athletes attending competitions in various sports, including my passion, wheelchair basketball and athletics. And last but not least, I want to introduce Madhari Latha, who's based in India, who's a national para swimming champion and a 3 times gold medalist, champions sport for persons with disabilities, founding the Wheelchair Basketball Federation of India, the Paralympic Swimming Association of Tamil Nadu, and the Yes We Too Can charitable trust focusing on inclusivity in sports and the promotion of sports for persons with disabilities. Also has written an autobiography on swimming against the tide. That's the title of her book. And in her professional life is a vice president of a bank. Wow. Okay, so credentials on credentials from my esteemed panel. Thank you very much, guys, for joining me. I'm going to kick off with the kind of central question, guys, of how inclusive is competitive sport currently. And I know that Memories and Suleiman's, your teams competed in Africa's Zone Commonwealth 3-on-3 wheelchair basketball playoff in South Africa last week. Let me start with you, Memory. How first of all do you think how inclusive do you think that experience was?
Thank you so much, Jordan, and to all our listeners. Thank you so much for joining us. Just to go on your question, Jordan, personally, for me, I would like to say that after 10 years of Namibia trying to participate in wheelchair basketball, we have actually finally arrived, because this is the first time our wheelchair basketball players had the opportunity to make their first debut at an regional competition, so to say. So I would like actually to give an applause to IWBF for actually breaking down wheelchair basketball to 3x3, because as it is, we cannot actually blame it to say that wheelchair basketball is expensive, because wheelchair basketball players, it's their right also to play basketball, but it has not been happening. Imagine, personally myself, it's 10 years. I'm not sure other countries, how many years have they been practicing the sport, maybe as a recreational sport in the country. But to be able to take athletes out there to meet other countries or other players, it gives a sense of confidence. It makes them feel inclusivity, the inclusivity that we are talking about now. Because if we look at it, we always have a perception to think Paralympic sports is only athletics, because that's what is kind of affordable for us to be able to have our athletes compete out there. So for me, the 3x3 wheelchair basketball was a milestone that we actually say that we have actually arrived.
Okay.
Yeah. So from our competition, we are actually then moving forward to know exactly what do we need to do next.
Yeah.
Where do we need to work on? What do we need to provide for our players? Is it more advanced wheelchair to use?
Sure.
Because their equipment that have been that they have played in has got years in them. So I think we are getting there if we talk about inclusivity for everybody, citing on the wheelchair basketball that we have actually incorporated into our sporting career for Namibia.
So progress has been made there. Let me come to you, Suleiman. How was the 3-on-3 for you, and how inclusive are you seeing sports in your region where you are?
Thank you very much, Jordan. Good morning, everyone. To start with, I used to be an athlete myself. I did athletics, powerlifting, and wheelchair basketball. And wheelchair basketball was the first introduction of sports in the country since in 1982 by the Swedish people. So in our region, we're the first to start wheelchair basketball. And for years, we've been practicing wheelchair basketball, but we've been playing around the region, like what we used to have a zone 2 of 9 countries. So we used to have all the competitions within that end. And this is the first time that the team was able to participate in the IWBF competitions in South Africa, and they performed very well as the first eye opener for them. and that we are hoping again to go for the championship, the World Cup qualifier championship in Ethiopia. Definitely, we have good players, and they are very experienced, and also very young ones as well. And basketball has been the game that has motivated many disabled people in our country, and they love the game, they love the sport, they play it every day. It's their daily life.
Mm.
So it makes us very happy to see that at least for the first time that our team has flown all the way to South Africa to participate in the 2-on-3, which now has given another boost for the development of Paralympic sports in the Gambia, with many athletes, enthusiasm and getting ready to see to it that they showcase their ability as well at both national and at international level. So really right now as we speak, it is a joyous moment for the Gambia. So I think it is great, and
I love that.
we're looking forward to getting to more and more competitions in the future.
No, I love that. Let me come to you now next, Craig. I mean, there's positivity that I'm hearing from Suleiman and Memory in terms of that event and the progression and that's been made with inclusivity. What are you seeing on the ground? Is that what you're seeing? Is progress being made from the athletes that you see and work with in regards to more inclusivity into wheelchair basketball and just disability sport as a whole?
Well, for me, I would say is
Oh no,
definitely.
sorry, that was for Craig. That's for Craig.
Sorry, I
Sorry,
was
sorry.
muted.
Oh,
Yeah, I think a lot of progress has been made in general, but certainly, and I am biased because I represent a disability group of cerebral palsy and acquired brain injury, and yeah, the progress has been made, and there is limitations in numbers and quotas for the games, and for every new event that comes in, an event has to be lost. But I think in terms of my experience, those with cerebral palsy, which in terms of reflects of the coordination impairments, are still underrepresented within the Paralympics. And I know the 3-on-3 basketball has been a great innovation, and it's encouraging a lot more CP athletes to get to that level of competition. But I would turn the question back on other representatives here. How many people with cerebral palsy actually were in wheelchair basketball at the Paralympics? And I bet you the numbers that were actually there were very, very small. I would say probably maybe 5% of the athletes involved in wheelchair basketball have got cerebral palsy. I may be wrong, but that's my. So I think improvements have been made. We've got a long way to go, and we need to do more. Get those athletes with more severe impairments involved in the Paralympics and sport in general.
I think it's a good point. Being in Japan for the previous Paralympic Games, I saw quite a few athletes with cerebral palsy, but in a very 2 or 3 sports. I didn't see it across the board, and that was definitely noticeable for me. Madhari, let me come to you now and ask you about the issue of gender and how you think that gender impacts on inclusion. Do you think it's more difficult for girls and women to get involved in sport and play?
Definitely. Hi, everyone. Hi, Jordan.
Hi.
Definitely for girls, more challenges because families will have more concern about their safety. Normally, leave about the disability or whether the girl is with disability or without disability, parents will have concerns. And when it comes to a girl with disability, more concerns about their safety, how they can travel, how they can go to other places and play there. And there may be chances that the financial condition may not be good. Then in that case, somebody accompanying that girl also. If it is a boy, then there are chances they may send along with the team. But for girls, some families will have a feeling that somebody from the family should accompany. Suppose if their financial condition is not allowing, then they may not be able to send that girl. And apart from that, in some conservative people will be there. They may not be ready to send girls to play, and they will have so many doubts. So because of all these reasons, definitely it is a big challenge for girls. That's why recently in one of the interviews I told them, if a girl with disability is able to come to the ground, basketball court or whatever, playground, and if she is playing, that itself is a great thing. So it's like a equivalent to winning a Paralympic medal. So after that, slowly they may be able to move forward. But for that, definitely lot of support is required, either from family or society and government, everyone, to encourage girls.
So let me stick with you, Madhuri. What do you think needs to be done to make sure that not only at national but at international level, inclusivity is improved? And it's specifically for girls. You're saying it's a big problem for girls and women. What do you think needs to be done within your region, your country, but also internationally to ensure that more women and girls with disabilities have the opportunity to play? And you're saying safety is an issue. What needs to be done to ensure that they do feel safe in attending whatever sports club they want to go to?
Yeah, what I think that administration positions, if more women are there, coaches position also more women are there, and technical experts. Like the more women coming to the senior positions also will help the families to give the confidence that, okay, there are some role models. Already some women reach to that level. So my girl also will go to that level. So it will be good if international level also encouraging more women to take up senior positions or becoming technical experts, coaches, like that. That will, I sincerely feel that will encourage more players, women players, to come forward and play in this competitions. That is one of the things, apart from all other support.
Sure, thank you. Memory, similar question. Where you are you seeing a significant difference in the amount of participation of people with disabilities, from girls to boys? Are you seeing a huge difference in girls that are taking part in disability sport to boys? And if so, why and how do we balance that better?
Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, definitely. I would like to share the same sentiment with our last speaker. It is still a challenge, you see, to have girls participate in sport. We have less number of girls that are particularly in sport. From my experience and research that I have actually done, definitely increasing more leadership in women in part of different organizations that we are all involved in. I think it gives a sense of security to that girl child when they are coming to take part in sports. Even as parents, they are letting their girls come and register for sports in different clubs, then they feel sense of security for their girl child. And I also think safeguarding policies also needs to be put in place, because so many things tend to happen to our girl child, and as these things are happening, you'll find that it will be very, very difficult for the girl child to come up and say, no, maybe the coach has been trying to make a move on me, or the coach say this, for me to be part of the team, I need to do this, A, B, C, D. But from discussions, even I've heard from past athletes, whether they are para athletes, whether they are Olympic athletes, they've gone through abuse to be part of sports. So if safeguarding policies are implemented into our sports organizations just to protect that girl child, whether it's a girl child, whether it's a boy child, at least there is security. Because if you hear about some of these stories after a career maybe have been destroyed because maybe the child fell pregnant and never got a chance to get back into sports because they feel stripped off of their security to be part of what they love to do. So such policies have to be put in place, and more awareness for women to actually, take up leadership position, just because of that girl child who needs to come and join, the organization. But it's still a challenge, even on the ground, for us to have more of the female athletes to come and take up these sports careers.
Thank you. Solomon, let me come to you next now. The hashtag We the 15 campaign recently launched at the Tokyo Paralympics, and the IPC estimated 4.25 billion people would watch the games on TV. Now, for those that don't know what the We the 15 initiative is, it's the sport's biggest ever human rights movement to end discrimination. They say they want to aim to transform the lives of the world's 1.2 billion people with disabilities, who represent 15% of the global population. Do you, watching the Paralympics in Japan that's just come and gone, do you feel that they're having a difference in changing the perceptions where you are in the world of people with disabilities? Or are you not seeing enough of a difference in how people view disabled people because of what people might have seen at the Paralympic Games?
Thank you very much, Jordan. I think it is very, very important that We the 15 launched in Tokyo. I was actually in Tokyo myself with my team for the Paralympic Games, and it was great. To start with, for the Gambia, for the past years, we used to have the big challenge when it comes to area of discriminations and social involvement in life and so on, and especially. But as we speak now, when the countries ratified the UN Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities in 2013, and also we, the disabled people, we come up with the National Disability Bill in the Gambia, which has been enacted by the National Assembly and approved by the President, which is now being put into force in the country. And we have been seeing significant changes in terms of disability issues, especially in the area of discriminations and accessibility. Though still we have challenges in buildings and markets, but if you look around the sub-region, Gambia is the most accessible country when it comes to a person with disability. Okay. Not to talk about the roads, but we're talking about access to hotels, restaurants, supermarkets, yeah. But then they still
sorry to cut you. Do you think that's because attitudes are changing because of the Paralympics and the ideas and perceptions and understandings that people have about disability because of the Paralympic Games? Do you see a link?
Actually, I could say it's got a link with that, and also with the struggle that we put in place by the disabled people ourselves. So we came out in full force to say, look, what is really happening is not right. We are part and parcel of the country. We are part and parcel of the society, and we, have our contribution towards national development. We have a quota, so we need that quota to be given to us, and in doing so, we come up to go against with certain policies and certain situations that are really happening in the country, which is put in place by man, not by anybody else. So we feel that it is important that we could make the change ourselves.
Sure.
Like, just to give you a small story, when I started driving in 2003, I went to the police department for testing and to give me a driving license. They refused. They said I should go and hire a driver. I said, well, look, I need the car. I don't need to have someone to drive me. I don't have the money to pay, but I need the car to do the work of my organization, part of the country's national development thing. And they refused. So I said, well, okay, Mark, you inform all your police around the country. I'm going to drive. And I've been driving for 2 years without driving license, without insurance, without nothing. But I was doing so because I was making a campaign against it so that, the future disabled could not have a problem with that. And 2 years later, they have to call me up and say, well, okay, come, they gave me a driving license. Now, when you come to the Gambia, you have a lot of disabled people driving around now. They have their driving license and they have their own cars. So it's a milestone development that, it has to be taken the bull by the horn by the disabled themselves, to say, well, look, this is the challenge that we are facing and we need to make that change. And how can we go about that change? We need to work on how we can do that change. And that is what we did by doing a lot of campaigns for the government to ratify the UN Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities. And again, as the Federation, which I used to be the Vice President of the Federation for the Gambia, we put a lot of efforts in putting documents in place, like the National Disability Policy, the National Disability Act, which is
Okay.
now been enacted and now put into force. So now discrimination in the country, we are liable to charges, which is very, very important. And now we've seen a mass development in terms of resources being given to the National Paralympic Committee for both Paralympic Games and other national activities. So definitely it's really getting there. It's really changing.
That's good to hear. That's really good to hear. Craig, I don't know about you here in the UK, and I'll actually be more specific here in England. I feel that since the London 2012 Paralympics, in terms of perception of disabled people in this country, I think there's been a difference. I think the London 2012 Games had an impact on how people in this country see disabled people. Whether that translates then to the practicals of disabled people having better access to housing, to healthcare, to jobs is maybe a different discussion. But I don't know if you agree that the 2012 Paralympic Games and subsequently Rio and hopefully Tokyo has had a change in how people view and what they understand about disabled people in this country. Is that your understanding, or do you still not see it as positively as I do?
I certainly agree entirely. From days I competed in '96 at Atlanta, and the change that has gone through the Paralympic perception in that time is incredible. Even in '96 was the first year we didn't actually have to pay our own fares to get to the Paralympics.
Yeah, I remember.
And yeah, back in these days, it really is an incredible change. And Channel 4 have done an incredible job themselves in promoting disability and the movement. And hats off to them. But there's still a long way to go because there is, if you look at, say, the athletics team for the Paralympics and the athletics team for the Olympics, it's a very different you get.
Yeah.
There's not as many ethnic minorities. There's not as many different groups, and I know, for example, London, the biggest city in the country, one of the biggest cities in the world, but even to access sport for somebody in inner city London, especially disability sport, is a real challenge still.
No, I definitely agree with that. I'm going to ask, I've got some more questions of myself, I've got plenty more, but I want to try and open this up now to some of the questions from the audience that we've had before we started this webinar. I'll try and get through as many as possible. If anybody wants to answer the questions, raise your hand and I'll direct it towards you, and then I'll keep it moving. First question, what advice the panel would give about raising awareness of para sports within communities? What advice would any of you guys give if somebody wants to raise more awareness about Paralympic sport and disability sport within their community? What can they do? Yes, Mahari, you go for it.
Okay.
I mean, you can put your hand in the air physically. You're being very polite. You can just put your hand up. That's fine. That's cool.
Okay, fine. Okay, so because we started our wheelchair basketball federation in 2014, and at that time the sport was new for India. Very few rehab centers were practicing that one. So that's why I thought immediately I raised my hand to tell what efforts we put to tell others. What I personally feel with my experience, it is always better if we tell 100 words also people may not believe. It is better to arrange some small event there with the available resources and go and play. That is the best thing. So we went to, after starting our federation in 2014, in India, right now we are able to reach out to 24 states. The most important thing we did was we went to the new states and arranged one small event. We invited government, local NGOs working for persons with disabilities, media, like that. We invited all the people, if possible, college students or school students, like that. We try to invite, and with the available resources. We may not be able to do a big event, but once they come and see our persons with disabilities sitting in that wheelchair and playing, they started believing.
Yeah.
You all know that seeing is believing.
Yeah.
So after doing that one only, the more awareness we were able to create. Otherwise, we can go and give so many talks, but that may not be that much impactful. With their own eyes, if they see, then they will start believing that.
I love
That is
that.
one advice I would like to give.
No, thank you. I love that. I'm going to come to Suleiman and then Craig next. If you could both be quite brief with your answers so we can get through some more questions, that would be appreciated. Suleiman, what can people do to raise awareness about disability sport in their communities, in their areas?
Thank you, Jordan. The first thing that, for example, from experience, what we did was we make our own research on the issues that are being challenged by persons with disabilities in the country, and then we use disabled themselves to come out after the research to clearly state out what is really their challenge with the backing documents from the research that we had. And in doing so, we were able to make a milestone development in achieving those changes as we speak today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great. Craig, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I would keep it very brief, and I say seeing is believing. I think that's the point that was made earlier. But also, if you can educate the educators and the coaches in the mainstream sport, and you get them on board, that is a really important thing.
Totally agree. Next question is, we know that people with disabilities are among the worst affected by COVID-19 and the global health systems are in crisis. How do the panel think the pandemic will impact inclusion in sports? Does anybody want to answer that one? Madhari, you go for it.
We were able to do so many experiments during this pandemic time. This pandemic gave us more opportunities in one way, because now so many coaches across the world, our players, they are able to speak to international players, Paralympic medal winners. They were able to speak to our players very easily. Before pandemic, we used to think for everything, inviting people from other country or like that only, because we were not habituated to do this type of virtual events. But pandemic started changing our attitude. So our players are able to get the opportunity to get the tips from international coaches and getting inspiration from Paralympic medal winners. And also within the country also, we were able to organize some virtual championships. So they were able to interact with other players in the country. So we try to change our attitude in that aspect. Everything for a sport, everything need not be played on the court. That is must. But so many other things, wherever we can get tips or advices, all such type of, and internet networking virtually, all these things are possible through this virtual world. That's what I think.
I love that. We've got a question from Samson. How can we influence policy makers on Paralympic sports? What can be done to influence the decision makers, the people at the top of Paralympic sports and the federations? How do we change what they think, what they do, and thus kind of the trickle-down effect to grassroots?
Well, hello, Jordan. I just wanted to answer the first question that you asked.
Oh, go for it. Go for it. Sorry.
To, the challenges with COVID 2020. Can I go on?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, to be honest with you, 2020 has been a very challenging year for disabled people around the world. But what we did in Gambia was that I called up an emergency meeting while I was away. I was not even in the country. I was in the UK. And what we did was we put together a team, a workforce team that were doing a lot of fundraising, both funding financial and goods, because most of the disabled people in the country, I could say 70% of them depends on the streets begging because for their livelihood. So what we did was, because during the lockdown it was difficult for them. People are isolated. People are getting isolated with people, not to get interacted because of the COVID issues, and everyone is afraid. So they hardly get anybody to help them. But what we did was we wrote to companies, individuals, supporters from all around the world, including the Gambia, and we were able to raise a number of food items, funds, and also things that we can able to distribute to the disabled sports members and also non-disabled sports members to help them. So during that time, it was a little bit tough, but we were able to make sure that disabled people in the country were one way or the other were given something to at least stay at home, to count on something to benefit for themselves, in order not to get into contact with the virus or anything else. So definitely it was a challenge, but we were able to achieve that.
Thank you, Solomon. Did anybody have any suggestions or answers for the Samson's question? How we can influence policymakers? Craig, go for it. You're on mute, Craig.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Yeah, I think what we've got to do is get away from the view that the Paralympics is everything. Sport is everything, recreation is everything. So we need to actually widen their perception. I know it's something that the International Paralympic movement get. They make a statement often that they say the Paralympic Games won't grow, but the Paralympic movement will. And I think that's something we need to get into the mindset of all those that are involved in sport administration, sport politics.
Thank you. Memory, did you want to answer that same question?
Yes. It's a very difficult question, but to the viewer who actually answered we've actually asked the question. You know, it takes a lot of us to keep advocating for these policies to be changed, because most of the times, to find just a policymaker who will just come and consult on the ground, or to consult the people that are directly dealing, you know, with people with disabilities and how they feel, how they want things to be changed. It's very, very difficult. So we need to keep advocating, all of us, and including our viewers, you know, for people with disabilities, because for policies to be changed in favor of them, it really takes our government to understand very, very well, and those that advise them to actually come on the ground to actually see what is happening.
For sure. Thank you for that. I'm going to fast forward to a question which I think is really interesting from Bijou.
Can I answer that question as well, please?
Yes, briefly, please.
Yes, briefly, to be honest with you, that sports is a tool that can make a change in any issues pertaining to life.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did, we used the sport as a tool to achieve what we're achieving today. That sports, we've been participating in so many events without the support of the government. For example, like London 2012. The team that went to London 2012 was never supported by the government, but this was an individual support that I had from different friends and well-wishers put together. We were able to send the team to London. And because of that, when we returned, they feel, wow, how come these people went to London without the support of the government? And then they start asking questions. And I start making those questions happen to them, that because we've been shouting for support from the government, and each time that we wrote letters to them, they said, oh, we don't have funding. We have challenges in funding problems. All the funds go to football, you know? So nothing goes to other sports. So, but when they see this, that it was like an embarrassment for the government to see a team that was sent to London. And in fact, what happened was, when I had the BBC interview, I clearly stated out that we came to London without the support of the government. So it was like, hey, and everybody was calling me, sending me messages. You won't dare come back to the country because you will put into bars. I said, why should I be put into bars when I'm speaking the truth? So I came home. In fact, the Home Office in London called me up and said, well, do you think it's safe for you to go back? I said, yes, it's my country. I'm going back. And I did. And nothing happened. The truth is the truth. But sports is a tool that can make a lot of changes in many things. So I believe sport is a tool for policy change.
I definitely agree with that, Solomon. And to your point about football, in recent years, it's become very, very evident to me that every sport is competing with football, even the mainstream sports, even rugby, cricket, athletics, boxing. Those sports are bigger than you know, the Paralympics, and even they are dwarfed by football. So every sport in the world for me is competing for money, attention, development alongside football. Football is the #1 sport in the world, and I think that's something that, so I like football, but it's interesting seeing that Paralympic sport isn't competing with the rugbies and the crickets and the tennis. We're all competing against football, which I find quite interesting as well. There's a question that I want to answer, which I think is quite important. I think that Bijou, forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly, who's asked, Tokyo has brought para sports into the limelight. How do we keep the momentum going? What role can the media play? And it's something that I often put towards Channel 4 here in the UK, because one of my frustrations is always that we get excited and we make a big deal about Paralympic sport every 4 years. Every 4-year cycle, it's Paralympics coming up. And what I find is that we start from a standing still point every single year, every single cycle, educating people about disability sport. And for me, the responsibility on people like myself and Channel 4 and international media and broadcasters is to ensure that throughout the cycle, in between games, we are covering disability sport, we are talking about disability sport, and that's my job. So what I'm going to be doing now is speaking to the British Paralympic Association, and I want to hear from international bodies as well. So anybody on this call, on this meeting, that's interesting stories, interesting athletes at grassroots or elite level, let me know, because my job is to ensure that during the cycles, in between the 4-year cycles, disability sport is kept on the agenda, and it's not just a big deal every 4 years. So I take some responsibility in ensuring that the momentum continues in between cycles. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that. If not, I'm happy to ask. I've got some more questions here. Yes, so Madhari, go for it.
Yeah, I want to add one thing, like social media. So we can use social media also to create more awareness. What I observed in India earlier, even when Paralympics happened, also we didn't even aware of that event was happening, because media used to cover more about Olympics. Once Olympics was over, everybody forgot
It's over.
subsequently
Yes.
Paralympics.
Yes.
But once the social media became popular, from there onwards, I am seeing the improvement. So many people are posting about these things, and so I think I personally feel through social media also we can create more awareness about Paralympics sports throughout the year, not during just Paralympics or any other big events.
Totally agree. We have a question here. What sports products would the panel like to see being developed for entry-level disability sports? I know that we're very lucky and I suppose blessed here in the place like the UK. We have some of the most advanced and fancy and technical wheelchairs and equipment for disabled athletes, but in other parts of the world, that's not always the same situation. What would you like to see in terms of innovation of technology and products? Do you want to see that would help young people with disabilities get into disability sports at an entry level?
Hello, Jarrett.
Solomon, go for it.
Hello?
Solomon, go for it. Solomon, sorry,
Yeah,
go for
actually, it. I'll first come into the first question, then I come with the second question. How do we keep the momentum? Is that, for example, for the Gambia National Paralympic Committee, what I did in the past years is that I looked around the sporting fraternity, because we have Sports Journalism Association, and also we have some very good reporters. So what we did was we had a reporter who is a disabled himself, and then we appoint him as the press attaché to the Paralympic movement, and since then he has been reporting significant events. Even when we have no activity, there is something in the social media talking about disability, talking about Paralympic sports. So that's what the tool is really helping us to keep the momentum, and we're also encouraging the athletes to keep the training, to keep on whatever good they're doing. Even though Paralympics is far ahead, but we have lots of other activities to do. Like we have national championship, like wheelchair basketball, national championship. We have athletics, we have powerlifting, and we have other components that is done within the year before going into the Paralympics activities. So the momentum is an ongoing thing. You see. Okay, coming up to the second thing, we're looking at the brand of the equipment. For example, in Africa, how can we be completely involve and completely challenge the Western world or other countries that have the resources is that the problem that we're having is because we are not using the same level of equipment, the same level of gadgets, and that as a result is really leaving Africa behind. But we're doing everything possible to at least advocate from our governments to help us to get the right equipment to compete effectively with the other national countries or with other world, especially the Western world.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at it now, the equipment that is used in competitions, be it qualifications, be it other national championship, be it Paralympic events, they are far ahead to compete with the top athletes because we don't have the right gadgets, the right support, the right resources to make sure that we acquire those equipment. So we are not in the same level.
Okay.
So I've been speaking about this for many years. In order for us to get into that level, the equipment must be classified to be the same level. But then the other challenge is that we also need to get the resources to also able to acquire those equipment. But I challenge motivation to at least come up with such solutions to help Africa, because we believe that most of us use our equipment for motivation, and by motivation adjusting their level of development into other high products can really help Africa achieve the goals. Thank you.
Motivation. The challenge has been drawn. There you go. I've got a minute. If anybody else wants to very briefly answer that question, Craig, I'll give you 30 seconds each. All three of you. Craig, you go first.
Well, a very personal thing. I've been involved in developing an athletics event called race running, which is now called frame running. It's now a World Para-Athletics athletics event, and that is, I would like to see a cheap, easy, accessible frame for that they can be used in countries with low economic status. That would be great to actually develop the sport as an event that I can talk for hours on, but I won't know over very short time.
Thank you for that. Madhari, did you have an answer?
Yeah, I would like to add one thing. With regard to, suppose example, if we take wheelchair basketball, in a country like India where indoor wooden courts are very limited, so it's very difficult, even though like an organization like Motivation provide at a affordable price the wheelchairs, but it's difficult to find an indoor wooden court. So my request is, according to the country condition, for entry level, if we are able to provide chairs which can be used even in on outdoor courts or like that, then it will be easy. Even people can start playing from villages also. So it's a very big challenge to find indoor wooden court. So that is one request.
Thank you. And finally, Memory, you have 30 seconds. Sorry to keep it so short. Sorry.
No, that's okay, Jordan, because I also just want to throw it to motivation, because from my experience, they actually assemble very good wheelchairs. Our 3x3 wheelchair basketball players, they actually used wheelchairs that we got under them 10 years ago. So meaning that if they can come up, I think, with another innovation or exchange programs, just to even come to Africa, to different centers that they can teach even our own athletes to make these wheelchairs, I think it would be a very good program. Because I'll give you an example with our team that went to South Africa. In those players, we have one of the athletes who can technically assemble everything. If a wheelchair, if there are tubes and everything, we know that already Temos, this is his department, he can do. So we don't have to have another technical person within the team, though we must, because we need to have the athlete focus on the game. But we know that he can do such job. So I think motivation needs to come up with other innovative programs that they can actually share within our African continent, because definitely equipment is one of the challenges that most of our athletes cannot access our sports.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. I'll just wrap in 15 seconds. The energy that I'm getting from all the panelists here is really positive. I'm much more optimistic about the progress that's being made with inclusivity in parts of Africa that I'm hearing in particular than I expected. Some great work being done, lots of energy of get out there. If your governing bodies aren't doing the work that you want them to do, force them, make it happen. Use your initiative and really do what you can do to hold power to account to ensure that everybody has access to disability sport, be it at elite level or grassroots level. And thank you very much, everybody. I'm well over, so I'm going to hand back very quickly to Amanda.
Wow, thank you, Jordan, and thank you, panel, for so much energy. We've heard the challenge as motivation. Thanks, panelists. Our challenge, as ever, is funding. So if there's anyone in our audience who wants to talk to us about funding new product development, we would love to hear from you. I'd just like to echo Suleiman's wise words, which is sport is a tool that can make many changes to many things. We completely agree. But this little group together, we need to work together to make policymakers realise that and take investment seriously. Thank you, panel. Once again, thank you, Jordan. We're incredibly grateful you could all take the time to share your thoughts and expert perspective today. It's been really, really good. And we hope to host quarterly webinars on disability and development issues in the future. So if any of the audience have thoughts about what would be of interest for you to join, to participate in, we welcome your suggestions when we ask for feedback. Any of the audience who'd like to know more about motivation or our work, please be in touch. We'd love to hear from you. We have come to the end, sadly, of our webinar. Thanks again, Jordan. Thanks again, brilliant panel, for giving up an hour to this really important discussion today. We could have done with more time, Jordan, couldn't we, I think? Best wishes to all of you from everyone at Motivation. Thank you. Have good weekends. Cheerio. Goodbye.
Bye.